Hi, everybody. Yeah, that means we're back. Craig Peterson here on WGAN. And we're going to talk right now about a TV show that I have really enjoyed over the years. There's a few shows that I watch pretty regularly. Of course, there's the sci-fi shows. We won't talk about those right now. But a couple of them are The Prophet, and I really like that show. And I like the guy who is the main character on that show, and his name's Lemonis. He owns a huge interest in, I think it's Camping World, as well as Good Sam Club, and he invests in small businesses. I disagree with him almost 100% on politics, but he really does try and help people out, which I think is fantastic. And he goes into these businesses that are struggling, that are trying to figure out how do we move to the next step, or how do we even survive. And then he helps them out, and he oftentimes invests in them. And so when he invests, he takes a really good chunk, usually enough so that he has a controlling interest. In other words, 51% sort of a thing. And then he's off and running, and he helps build them into real successful companies. I guess it goes back to the question of, would you rather have a small slice of a huge pie as an owner, or would you rather have 100% of a tiny pie that may end up collapsing in on itself at some point in time? And that's kind of the decision these people have to face as they are talking with him and trying to figure it out. So I like that show. He had a really good one recently I found very, very fascinating. So check that one out, The Prophet. Another one that I've enjoyed over the years is Shark Tank. Now, Shark Tank is, if you haven't seen it, is a show, and there are a number of them. It's called Dragon's Den overseas. There's one in the UK. There's a Shark Tank in Canada. There's a Shark Tank in Australia, all called slightly different things. But the idea behind Shark Tank is you go in there, you make a pitch to these investors, and the investors decide if they're going to throw some money at you. And they will make a deal saying, okay, I'll give you 20%. For 20% of your company, I'll give you this much money. Or, I'll bring in people to help out. I want controlling interest, or whatever it is. Well, one of the business moguls on there, and they are part of this whole judging team on Shark Tank, just lost last week nearly $400,000. It was disclosed. And the $400,000 was lost to an email scammer. Now, if she had been listening to the show, she would have known about it and known about what's happening. And she has enough money that she kind of brushed it off. Oh, well, c'est la vie. And she thinks that she'll never get the money back. And you know what? She's probably right, because we've seen that happen many times. Even with the FBI getting involved, most of the time that money never, ever comes back to you. But according to media reports, a scammer who was posing as Barbara Cochran's executive assistant forwarded it. Man, let's try this again. Forwarded her bookkeeper an invoice requesting that payment be made. So I'm looking at the email right now. Barbara released it, which is great. That way people can see what happens. But it's an email. It's from Jake somebody. It was sent on Friday, February 21st to Emily, carbon copy Michelle. Subject, forward, invoice 873, and it's got a name of a German company. It says, "Hello, Emily. Please see the below attached invoice for payment. We are ready to proceed with shipping next week. Please ensure the invoice is paid in time. Shipping charges are additional." And it looks like a real little invoice. It's got the due date on it, which was due, the 27th. And the amount was $388,700.11. And it looks, as I said, kind of like a standard invoice. Dear customer, please see the attached invoice. Wire transfers may be directed to FFH Concept GmbH address here in Berlin, Germany. Bank details has got the bank name, the account name, bank address, the IBAN number, the SWIFT number. Thank you for your business. We appreciate it very much. But the truth was that this email did not really originate from Barbara Cochran's executive assistant. Instead, what happened here is the scammers had created an email address that looked the same as the executive assistant's. It had one letter different in it. So at first glance, it looks like, okay, yeah, it is executive assistant. And you and I look at 400,000 and say, whoa, wait a minute now. I don't even have that much. But in this case, apparently, Barbara Cochran, this was pretty normal for her. There's not only this amount, because she is involved in so many real estate deals. That's how she made her money, is real estate. But that she gets these invoices from these companies all over the world. So it did not look that strange. And the bad guys in this case, all they had to do is a little bit of research. They found out what the executive assistant's name was. They found out what the email address was. The bookkeeper did not spot this little spelling error, if you will, in the email address. And so when she asked questions like the purpose of the payment, her communication went straight to the scammers rather than the assistant, right? So what did she do? She hit reply. And where did the reply go? It went straight to the scammers, and the scammers gave him what looked to be, or gave her what looked to be a reasonable answer, right? So on Tuesday last week, seemingly satisfied by the answer she'd been given by the scammers who were posing as Barbara Cochran's executive assistant, the bookkeeper transferred the almost $400,000 into the bank account controlled by the scammers. And it was only when the bookkeeper manually CC'd Cochran's assistant directly with confirmation that the money had been sent that it became clear what happened. So again, that tells you don't respond to emails, right? Look it up, use your contact list, use your autocomplete to try and reach out to somebody to verify it. I always go one more step further, and that is get on the phone and verify it. Now, in speaking to People magazine, Barbara Cochran, again, apparently was pretty okay about the theft. She says, quote, I lost the $400,000 as a result of a fake email chain sent to my company. It was an invoice supposedly sent by my assistant to my bookkeeper approving the payment for a real estate renovation. There was no reason to be suspicious as I invest in a lot of real estate. Obviously, I disagree with that. There was reason to be suspicious, but anyhow, I was upset at first, but then remembered it's only money. So good for her, frankly. She posted a thing on Twitter about it. Lesson learned, be careful when you wire money. And she had retweeted something from TMZ about her getting hooked in this scam. And I'm glad she has a positive attitude about it. It's very unlikely, as I said earlier, that she'll ever recover a dime from these fraudsters because the money's wired. 90 seconds later, usually that money is gone and out of reach, and they probably went ahead and transferred it from German banks to other banks and continued to move the money around. It's kind of like what's happened in Eastern Europe and Ukraine with the $1 billion in aid that we sent that ended up bouncing around between multiple countries in order to hide whose pocket it ended up in. It's just kind of crazy. But it can happen to anyone. It can happen to any of us. Every last one of us, business person or otherwise, needs to be on guard. Don't reply to emails. Always make sure you enter in the email address if it's anything that might be of concern. And remember that banks and other places are unlikely to be, including the IRS, tax time, right, to be sending you emails about some of this stuff. Just double check, call them, phone them, look them up online and phone that number or ask a question from their help people over on their website. Well, we got one last segment here, and we're going to be talking about new security from Firefox that is really insecurity. This is Craig Peterson on WGAN. You know I like Firefox, right?